and today I'll guide you through the process of stratigraphic excavation and interpretation. Using a single archaeological sequence as our case study, we will examine how layers, cuts, fields and structures are recorded, analyzed and organized into a coherent chronological framework through the Harris matrix. By the end of this presentation, you will see how careful excavation and contextual analysis allow us to move from individual deposits to a broader reconstruction of a site's history. The video illustrates the principles and practice of stratigraphic excavation through the analysis of a single sequence. By examining the relationships between contexts, including layers, cuts, fields and structural elements, we can reconstruct the chronological development of the site. Using the Harris matrix as a recording tool, we proceed to step by step from the most recent deposits to the earliest contexts. In doing so, we demonstrate how stratigraphic relationships, artifactual evidence and scientific dating methods combine to produce a coherent interpretation. Our objective is not only to establish relative and absolute dates, but also to understand the sequence of human actions that created the archaeological record we excavate. Context 1 is the first context encountered during the excavation. Its position above all other layers indicates that it is the most recent deposit. It contains modern rubbish, which helps date the formation of this layer to during or after the deposition of the most recent objects, in this case a BlackBerry mobile phone. We therefore add our first rectangle at the top of the Harris matrix. Contexts 2 and 3 are two distinct deposits, differing in color and soil composition. They represent the infill of two separate trenches and are therefore recorded as two individual layers. Context 2 contains discarded early modern pottery, deposited at the time of or after the latest of the two vessels. The formation of this layer can therefore be dated to between that point and the modern period, when Context 2 was sealed by Context 1. Context 4 is what we call a negative context. It does not represent the accumulation of soil, rather it reflects a human action, the digging of a cut. It must therefore be recorded as a distinct stratigraphic unit. To ensure that negative contexts are visually distinguishable, they are labeled using a different shape, in this case an oval. Stratigraphically, Cut 4 truncates a series of earlier layers. However, in the Harris matrix, we record the layer immediately preceding the act of digging, that is, the most recent layer that existed before the cut was made. We then proceed to excavate Context 3, which is earlier than Context 1 but later than the layers beneath it. Context 3 forms part of the infill of a cut. However, it differs in color and texture from a second infill within the same feature, which we label Context 5. This indicates that the cut was filled with material derived from different sources and may have remained open for a period of time before being completely backfilled. For this reason, we cannot excavate Context 3 and 5 together, as they may represent separate depositional events that occurred at different times and possibly for different purposes. In the Harris matrix, we therefore record Context 3 as overlying Context 5. Both Context 3 and 5 form the fields of Cut 6. At this stage, we therefore have two cuts, Cuts 4 and 6, both of which truncate a series of earlier layers. Which one of these should be excavated first? As shown in the stratigraphic sequence, Context 7 lies uppermost and must therefore be excavated first. We could also excavate Context 8 and 9, as these too are truncated by Cut 4. However, we cannot determine precisely when posts 8 and 9 were inserted. They may have been placed at an earlier stage in the sequence. Alternatively, they may originally have formed part of a structure that was later truncated by Cut 4. They could, for example, be contemporary with Context 7, but this cannot be determined with certainty at this stage. Only once the overall interpretation of the site has been completed will we be able to place them securely within the broader chronological sequence. Radiocarbon analysis could also be undertaken to provide a probable date range. Once Context 7 has been removed, we proceed to excavate Context 10. Context 10 sealed two soil deposits, Context 11 and 12, which abut a brick wall. As Contexts 11 and 12 were physically distinct during excavation, they were assigned separate context numbers. However, following excavation, after examining the artifacts recovered from both layers and assessing the soil color and composition, it became clear that they represent the same deposit. In the Harris matrix, they are therefore linked with an equal sign to indicate their equivalence. Although these layers lie below the top of the wall, their abutment against it indicates that they were deposited after the wall had already been constructed. For this reason, they are excavated before investigating the wall itself. The same applies to contexts 13 and 14, which are treated in the same way as contexts 11 and 12. They were recorded separately in the field due to their physical distinction, but following post-excavation analysis, they are interpreted as representing the same deposit and are therefore linked as equivalent in the Harris matrix. It is now time to remove contexts 8 and 9 in order to reveal cats 15 and 16. After this, we can proceed with the excavation of contexts 13 and 14. These layers contain materials dating to the Roman period. As usual, we keep layers and artifacts separate during the excavation. Any equivalencies between contexts are established later during the interpretation phase of the site. The date of a layer is determined by the date of its most recent artifact, its terminus post quem, and by its stratigraphic relationship with the surrounding deposits, in this case its position beneath contexts 11 and 12. In context 13, a Roman glass perfume bottle dating to the 1st century CE was recovered. Mosaic tesserae were also found in the same context, although their date is uncertain. In context 14, Roman red slipware dating to the 1st century CE was discovered along with a gold brooch, a fortunate find, dating to the 3rd century CE. These materials are not contemporary. How should we interpret this? The later date of the brooch is crucial. It provides the terminus post quem for the deposition of the layer, indicating that context 14 cannot have formed before the 3rd century CE. The earlier Roman materials are therefore likely residual artifacts redeposited from elsewhere. This suggests that context 13 and 14 may represent a leveling deposit placed against the wall at a time when the wall was no longer in use. The brooch allows us to date this event to the 3rd century CE or later, and certainly before the insertion of the post represented by context 8 and 9. Radiocarbon analysis of the posts indicates a late 4th century date. It is therefore likely that contexts 13 and 14 were created sometimes between the 3rd and late 4th century CE. Contexts 17 and 18 represent a brick wall and its foundation. As context 17 consists of material deposited after the construction of the wall, it must be recorded and excavated before investigating the wall structure itself. The excavation of the wall reveals the cut of the foundation trench, which is recorded as negative context 19. Context 19 truncates a series of earlier layers, the latest of which is context 20. Context 20 sealed context 21. That sealed context 22. That finally sealed context 23. Context 23 is the earliest deposit identified in the sequence and is therefore recorded as the base of the Harris matrix. The materials recovered from the context are prehistoric but represent mixed chronologies. As in previous cases, the most recent artifacts within the layer, in this case a flint arrowhead, provides the terminus post quem for the deposit. The formation of context 23, therefore, occurred between the latest date indicated by the arrowhead and the deposition of context 22, which seals it. This completes our excavation sequence. Through careful stratigraphic excavation, context recording and post-excavation analysis, we have reconstructed a relative and absolute chronology of the site, from the most recent modern deposits at the top to the earliest prehistoric layers at the base. By applying the principles of stratigraphy, identifying cuts and fills, recognizing residual material, and using scientific dating methods where necessary, we have transformed a complex set of deposits into a coherent historical sequence. This is all for now, and I hope to see you the next time. Thank you.